Thank you all for being with us today for our Bayou Culture Gathering. We're very excited to have Ms. Corinne Martin with us, who is the author of the Louisiana Herb Journal, and she is a certified clinical herbalist, amateur naturalist, ordained interfaith minister, and certified spiritual director. We're so happy to have her with us today and for her presentation. This is our slide to let you know the people that bring this program to you. Myself with the Wetlands Discovery Center, Ms. Maida Owens, who you'll see posting some information in the chat. She's the Folklife Program Director of the Louisiana Division of the Arts. Dr. Rachel Doherty with the Center for Louisiana Studies at ULL, and Dr. Gary LaFleur, who is the R.E. Miller Endowed Professor of Honors Studies and Professor of Biology over at Nicholls State University. We also would like to share this disclaimer with you that we do not support any particular adaptation or management strategy. We're here to have some of the difficult conversations about being a community on the bleeding edge of coastal land loss. So we're very happy that you're all here with us to have those conversations. And of course, we couldn't do this without the support of our partners, the Louisiana Folklife Program, the Wetlands Discovery Center, the Louisiana Folklore Society, the Center for Bayou Studies at Nicholls, and the Center for Louisiana Studies at ULL. And of course, can't do this without a couple bucks. So thank you very much to the National Endowment for the Arts, the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary Program, Restore the Mississippi River Delta, the M.J. Sindler Family Fund for Culture and Media, Louisiana Office of Cultural Development through the Division of the Arts, and the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. All right, and so for this, I would like to pass this on to Maida to talk about the Passing It On workshops.
Yeah, I'm excited that we've been having some excellent Passing It On workshops all spring, and so I'm sharing about things that happened in the past at this point and not upcoming. We will probably be having monies. Well, we are going to be having monies for the next spring. And so if you know of any tradition bearers that need to be passing on a tradition, please ask them to contact me. Next slide.
Sorry, Maida.
Douglas Fazio is a citizen of the United Home and Nation, and he is the only one that I'm aware of that is making cypress baskets. And he figured this out by himself. It is a long-term tradition in this area, but the last known maker passed away, and he took it upon himself that he was going to bring this back. So thanks to Douglas Fazio, we now have cypress basket making. So please contact me if you know of somebody that needs to be passing on a tradition.
Thank you so much, Maida. And so here is our agenda for today. We're going to hear from Ms. Corinne Martin. Then we'll have a brief question and answer period with her. We're going to ask her what her hope for the coast is. Then we'll give you a few updates on the meeting times for the working groups. We open this up for anyone that may have any relevant announcements to the work that we're doing here. And then if you'd like to stick around, we have an informal discussion period from about 1 to 1:30. So we hope that you'll stick around with us. So it is a great pleasure of mine to introduce you all to Ms. Corinne Martin. She has this book right here. This is my own copy. And this is, it's more than an herb journal. It's poetry. It's a beautiful work of art. And so, Ms. Corinne, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'll pass the baton on to you.
All right, great. Well, hello everyone, and thanks Jonathan and Maida and Samantha and Sarah and Gary and everybody who made it possible for this to for me to be here. I'm a dinosaur, just letting you all know. So they had kind of had to hold my hand through all of the putting things together here. But I'm really, really also very grateful for all of you for your work that you do in trying to solve some of these problems, or at least give a space for people to talk about things that sometimes can be breaking our hearts. The state of the state and the state of the coastal areas breaks my heart, and I know a lot of times we end up feeling kind of hopeless, and it's kind of a scary situation. However, we are all here. We're all in our own ways working on it, and my way is to just kind of help people to see one aspect of the land and to see the land in a different way, as opposed to just something to use, abuse, or something we can't have any, that we can't help in some way. So, what I love to do is to just introduce people to another way to see the land. And that's what I try to do in the Herb Journal. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the use of medicinal plants and kind of an approach to that, and how that fits in with how we see and how we can help or assist in some way the place itself. So, and just starting, I wanted to read a couple of quotes that I found. Oops, not ready yet. There we go. Just wanted to read this, and just to me, what it says is so important, because I think it's what I've heard you all talk about. And I think it's really important for us to remember that, for number one, and by the way, these came out of National Geographic magazine. They had a recent issue on indigenous cultures. And one of the quotes in there was, "Community is not people alone, it is also the place." And so that's, I think that's what I feel so strongly when you all are talking and in the work that you're doing, is that you're not just looking at the people and not just looking at the place, but there really isn't any separation. And so, you can't have a place be at risk without having the people be at risk, and et cetera. And then the other quote that I liked in there is, "Home is baked into our DNA. No matter how long we've lived elsewhere, no matter how many years have passed since we last set foot inside the house or apartment, town or city where we grew up, certain elements remain part of us." And that is so true for me. I mean, I lived in Louisiana, then I moved all over the country, and then I settled in Maine. I've been here for 38 years, and then I'm also in Louisiana half the year and Maine half the year. But I still tell people here, there's bayou water in my blood. There's just no way that I cannot have a place in my heart for Louisiana, and a place in my body. I mean, I really feel like we're in a way made up of the elements that we're around. So if we see the next slide, that would be great. So some of the things I wanted to talk about before we get to the herbs is that our concept of home and what that means. I just really feel so much like, sometimes I'm walking out and harvesting the plants, and I feel like I'm part wild, like I'm feral or something. And I don't mind that at all. My kids are not so happy about it, but they're waiting for me to get to be normal. And so far, 70 years down the road, that hasn't happened. But I just feel like we are home. We're made up of the minerals and the air and the sun and the waters around us, and they inform. It's not just, even if we're not eating the plants or using the plants, we're sharing air with them. So we inhale and exhale together. So it's kind of interesting to just think about what home means to us. And then, I was thinking about, we're talking a lot about healing. So I'll talk about healing with the plants, but also you all are working your butts off to try to figure out some way to help heal the place where you live. And that's really difficult. And I think it involves a lot of heart work as well as brain work and physical work. And so then the thought of what healing means, I taught at the University of Southern Maine for almost 20 years. And I taught in the nursing school, and I taught botanical therapies and healing and spirituality and holistic health. And I always started the classes off with, what does that mean? What does it mean to heal? And I think we might have this on the next slide too, but that's okay. The one thing I want to point out is that the word heal comes from the Anglo-Saxon word hal, H-A-L, which means whole and holy. And I just think it's so cool that that root word speaks both to the integrity of a place as well as to the sacredness of it. Because for me, you know, the land is as much my church as any building I could walk into. And I think many people feel that kind of sense of the holy when they walk into a wild place. And where do we start? We start where we are. So that's where we're going to start right now. Okay. And so then, okay, I think we could go to the next slide. All right. So we start where we are because what's underfoot and around us and overhead, I mean, unless we live in the middle of New York City, and I have actually given a workshop in New York City, and I was surprised that nobody knew what a dandelion was. Like, okay, people go outside now. Just walk outside. There must be a dandelion somewhere in New York City. But so the plants are all around us. I cannot take a walk without seeing a medicinal plant. That's all there is to it. In the little house where I live, there are over 100 medicinal plants in a 3-mile radius around my house. And I know that I only know half of the things that are out there. So herbs, I asked an herbalist once what he thought herbs were, and this is Stephen Foster, and he was a fabulous herbalist and has written dozens of books and is internationally respected. And he said, an herb is something that works. It's something that has been used historically, and it could be anything between a banana and a baseball bat. And I'm like going, what? But banana, you know, you can use the peel. The peel has lots of different compounds that actually help to heal wounds. And baseball bat is made of ash, wood, right? I mean, I'm not a giant baseball player, but I'm pretty sure most of them are made of ash. Tell me if I'm wrong. But in any case, it's made of some kind of wood, and the chances are that wood has some medicinal properties. So, you know, if you think an herb is something that comes up in like in a neat little bottle, which they do, you know, my little St. John's wort tincture here, and you can go to Whole Foods or some health food store and find lots of them on a shelf in a little bottle, but actually they're everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. It's just like astounding. So for that book and for the upcoming book that I'm working on, I'm limited to myself to 50 herbs, but it's been estimated that I can't remember how many hundreds of millions of plants there are estimated to be in the world, but 20 to 30% of them are estimated to have medicinal properties. So, and that's just because we haven't examined all of them. That's my guess anyway. So how do herbs work? There are a lot of different ways that people look at medicinal plants and think that they're working. So like, for instance, in Oriental medicine, there's a whole system of seeing the body as part of the elements around you, and also that plants have a constitutional effect, meaning that you know, if you're a person who is always mucousy and you have colds and you're kind of cold and whatever, then they say you might have a cold constitution, or they have a word for it. So then what they would give you would be herbs that warm up and dry up your body, or your, you know, and they don't see that your body as being separate from your mind or your spirit. So that's one way of looking at it. Folkloric herbalists would look at it from what has been used traditionally. What have people been doing for, you know, the past 100 or 200 years? And that's how they would make that determination. And there's, you know, people will say there's no research on herbs. That is so not true. The National Institutes of Health, I'm constantly using them as a reference because there's so much research and they are really good at putting that together. So there are lots of different websites, but that's one of my favorite things. And then, well, I don't know, I could get on forever. So I'm going to try to focus. So the way that I look at it and the way that I operate and the way that many Western herbalists mean, and I mean Western in the, you know, in the world as opposed to Eastern. I don't mean like California versus Louisiana. The way that they look at it is that the plants have all kinds of chemical compounds in them. And some of them can have hundreds, 1,000, but they're in there in teeny weeny amounts. And all of those compounds work synergistically, so they work together to produce an effect. And so when I am thinking about a particular problem, what I'm looking at is what kinds of biological activities might this plant have. So one activity might be that the herb is diuretic. So if I'm working with somebody or myself and I have a bladder infection, or I just like, oh, I really need to pee, but I just can't, then I might want to use an herb that's a diuretic. If I am thinking about somebody who has a fever, then I might want an herb that is a febrifuge, which is a kind of old-fashioned word for it. It means it's a diaphoretic. It produces a sweat. And a sweat is the way that the body cools itself, right? If you're really hot on a hot day, you sweat. If you can't sweat, you're going to stay hot. So you might jump in the lake, or the bayou, but you better be careful. So you can come in Maine and jump in the lake, but I wouldn't recommend jumping in the bayou. But so the way that Western herbalism looks at the medicinal plants is what kind of biological activity do they have? And there are all kinds of things. And this is kind of where it gets a little quirky, because for pharmaceutical folks or medical doctors, they're saying, oh, but this has what is it? It has some kind of compound. It could be neoplastic, which means it might cause cancer. It also probably has lots of anti-neoplastic compounds. So all of the compounds, again, they work together synergistically, but they're in tiny amounts. So Dr. Andrew Weil, who is with the University of Arizona, I forget what the whole official name is, but it's their holistic health program for doctors. He said, people think that pharmaceutical drugs are dangerous when in fact are safe, but herbs are dangerous, when in fact the opposite is true. That pharmaceutical drugs are the ones that are so powerful, you have to be really careful using them. Whereas with an herb, you have so many different compounds and they're in such minute amounts that it's really hard to hurt yourself with an herb. Now that's not, please don't go out and dig up something and just chew it and say, well, Corinne said they're all safe, so I'm gonna, because I don't want to hear about it. And again, I'm not your doctor, and you have to use common sense, etc. But so the way that herbs work is, to some extent, that interaction of the biochemical properties in the plants. And how do we know all of that stuff? Well, herbalism has been alive for, I think it's the World Health Organization that documents at least 5,000 years of working with medicinal plants. So we have indigenous cultures who have been using plants since there were plants. How do we know? We read some really good books. And how do we use them? We use them very carefully. Now, I can go out and dig up dandelion and eat dandelion leaves and make a dandelion flower syrup and be really safe. But I also know my body, and I also know that I'm not sensitive to a lot of things. So this kind of bleeds into the next question: are they safe? First of all, you know your own body. You have a healthcare practitioner. Use common sense, because this is not a contest. It's not a contest between conventional medicine or herbalism or some other quote unquote natural or holistic form of healing. If you know that you are a person who is sensitive to many compounds or many drugs or many foods, then you do not use something that you have never used before without your doctor's guidance and somebody keeping an eye on you. We can use herbs in our food. There are so many plants that have healing and nutritious compounds. And things like fig and blackberry and mulberry and thistle and all of those plants, we use them for food, but they also have healing properties. So that's a kind of a cool thing. So the issue of safety, there is a category of herbs that the there's some American Botanical Council, and there are other kinds of groups that monitor the safety of herbs. And there is one category called GRAS, or grass. And what that means is generally recognized as safe. So if you are looking up a plant and you're using it, wanting to try it for the first time, go with that brand. I mean, go with that kind of category of plants, as opposed to something that potentially has difficulties. And this may be raising a lot of questions, so please write down your questions and I'll try to answer them when we it's like I'm on a roll here, so I don't want to keep you here for 24 hours. If we could go to the next category, that would be great. So how can herbs save the coast? What a great question. You know, one of the things for me is that, as I mentioned earlier, I cannot walk outside and not fall in love with something. And I believe that we sometimes don't see what's happening under our feet because we're so distant from it in a certain kind of way. You know, we have busy lives, we're mentally engaged in work and all kinds of projects, and we're on our cyber, whatever the heck, and we forget to notice what's underneath us, underneath our feet, and what's happening around us. If I walk the same 3-mile loop every day, which I don't, I kind of vary it, but if a plant population changes, I notice it. I notice it right away. So I'm paying attention, and that's part of how thinking about medicinal plants and getting to know some of the plants that grow around you can actually help. Because if you are aware of plants, if you're aware of the plants, you will notice when something's changing. If you're aware of the water levels, you notice when something's changing. So we get so involved with, engaged with, and captured by, to some degree, this other level of reality where our brains are always engaged and we're flipping through all of our screens and etc. But really, this is where we live. We live on the earth. And it does not make any sense at all to live here in a human body and not notice the things that are supporting, that we're walking over, that we're even sometimes using for food, blackberries or mulberries or whatever. It doesn't make any sense to not know our neighbors. So those are our little wild neighbors. And I really think that just attention, awareness, and caring can make a big difference. So I think I'm ready for next slide. Oh yeah, okay. All right. So they said, oh, we could show some slides. And so I said, okay, well, here's 50 slides. So, okay, fine. We're not doing all 50, but look at these. I have hundreds of slides. But that's so cool, right? Because there are so many plants out there. And some of them, you know, I want to put a little note in here just about native plants, because there's a really very helpful awareness going around about native plants and how important they are. And so, you know, sometimes I've talked about medicinal plants and people have said, well, this is a weed or this is an invasive or whatever. And it's true, but this is what we have. So it might be ideal that we eventually only have native plants, but right now what we have is all of these things that include some natives as well as some pesky ones. So my books will include the pesky ones too, because what the heck, you know, if cleavers is driving you crazy in your garden, so make a cleavers tea and steam it up and eat it as a vegetable because it's got tons of nutrients, right? Duh. So anyway, pardon me, I'm getting a little snippy here. So all right, so look at these. I mean, beggar's beautyberry, you might have that in your garden. It grows out in the woods. Beggar's ticks it's so pesky. Because if you or your dog or cat or whatever walk around anywhere wild, you are going to end up with those little beggar's ticks. They just stick in your socks and your dog's hair. And if you sit on something, it sticks in your sweater or your butt, and they're prickly. So who wants that? Well, you will not believe how many medicinal properties it has. Okay, black cherry. Okay, who has not made cherry bounce? All right, well, guess what? It's medicinal. So my relatives were so excited to hear about that. So black cherry bark, I mean, wild cherry cough syrup, right? And wild cherry cough drops, they're medicinal. They're from black cherry. It's not like something somebody just made up in their kitchen. Dewberry and blackberry, I mean, those are medicinal. Cleavers, those sticky, everybody I know down there calls it sticky weed. And oh man, people hate it. It's fabulous. Dandelion, elderberry, evening primrose, figs. Did you know figs can improve sperm motility? Now, duh, hello. So why are we not looking at these things? Okay, so we can go to the next one because I'm going to get on a rant again. All right, now we're going to start talking about some of the herbs. And this is where I get to bore you with lots of different information. So what I have up there is some of the things that Baker's ticks has been used for. But I want to read you just a little bit about some of its properties. And pardon me while I read. But when I first I've seen Baker's ticks all over the place. In Maine and Louisiana, lots of different areas. When I first started thinking about doing a book, and I just started looking up every plant I found, and Baker's ticks I looked it up and it's like, are you kidding me? So here's some of the things that, as I mentioned, that they have properties, chemical properties. Okay, so here's some of the chemical activities in Baker's ticks. It's antibacterial, antiseptic, antiviral, astringent, anti-dysentery, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-diabetic, hypoglycemic, which means it would help with diabetes, antifungal, anti-malarial, decongestant, diuretic, febrifuge, hepatoprotective, it means it protects your liver, hypotensive means it lowers your blood pressure. Now, we're not talking about lowering your blood pressure to the point where you're dead. We're just talking about over time, taking moderate doses of it, it can actually help with that. It's also, what is it? It's active, benign BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy or hyperplasia, diarrhea, colitis, Crohn's disease. So it just astounds me how many medicinal properties these plants have. And they're, some of the plant preparations, we can talk about how to make them if we have enough time, but some of the preparations taste terrible. And some of them actually are not too bad. I have some cousins who actually have decided that they prefer to make their tinctures in port, that instead, or, I use grain alcohol, which, has a bit of a kick, but you're not drinking a whole jug of it. You're taking a quarter of a teaspoon of it, right? So anyway, okay, I'll move right on. And I know I'm getting all excited here, but hopefully I'm making some sense. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Is that our next slide? Cleavers. Okay, cleavers. Look at all the things it can do. Urinary tract infections, kidney stones, swollen glands, tonsillitis, ulcers, psoriasis, eczema, blood pressure elevation, wounds. So here are some of the properties of cleavers. And let's see. They are astringent, antiseptic, a lymphatic tonic. So that helps to boost immunity. A diuretic. So you could use it if you have bladder infection or kidney stones or something along those lines. Anti-inflammatory. So that means it would be good for some kind of pain. Diaphoretic. That means it's going to help to lower fever. Because what happens is, it kind of makes you sweat. And it has a lot of nutritional benefits, including vitamin C. So, it can be used internally and externally. And that's a cool thing about herbs, is that you can take them internally, but you could also use them externally. And for people who are really sensitive to various kinds of pharmaceutical drugs and other things, or foods, what I recommend is if you really like the herb and you want to use it, you could just use them externally. So if you have a cut or scratch or boo-boo or insect bites or boils or minor burns or even skin fungus or sunburn, you can crush this up and pulverize it, because otherwise it's going to feel prickly. And just put that use it as a kind of like a poultice. You just make it so it's almost gelatinous, and then you just hold it right on that. And believe me, my kids grew up complaining about having these little green wads all over their body, but it works. So, okay, so that's cleavers. Let's see what else we have. Can we get the next one? Evening primrose. Oh my gosh, this is another one. And there are so many different species of evening primrose that grow in Louisiana. And I mean, I have a list that's so long it takes up half a page, which I won't read to you. And I know I'm talking really fast, but I'm trying to not keep everybody, from their lunch break. Evening primrose has so many amazing properties. and the research on it continues. So, so some of its activities are, it's anti-inflammatory, a really great anti-inflammatory. It's mildly sedative. It doesn't mean you're going to take it and plonk out. It's just calming. It's astringent, which means that it pulls the tissues. So if you have a cut or a scratch, you could crush up the flower or leaves or root and just put that right on there. So what it does is astringency means that it brings the wound edges together. It'll help slow bleeding. Now, if you get your arm cut off, you're not going to grab evening primrose, right? You're going to go to the hospital. So we got to kind of keep things in mind. I mean, if I'm hit by a car, take me to the hospital. But if I'm just have a little wound, then I can try that. Let's see. It contains many essential fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. And some of the things that aren't written up there, and this is pretty amazing. It's good. PMS. People started using it for PMS and menopause. So that's when it kind of got popular, because so many of us boomers were hitting there. And so people are going, oh, this kind of helps. Polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, also eczema, psoriasis, asthma, multiple sclerosis. Now, I'm not making this stuff up. There are actual research studies that show over time it can actually make a difference. Hyperactive ADHD and ADHD, diabetic neuropathy. I could go on and on. Hepatitis B, alcoholism, tardive dyskinesia. So, what this speaks to really is not just that like it's a miracle plant, but that there are so many nutrients in it that it may be contributing to or helping to alter the nutritional status of a person who has some kind of illness that is based on some kind of nutritional deficiency. So, that bears a lot of research. And I'm not saying if you have multiple sclerosis or schizophrenia, which has also been used to support, that you go out and just take this and throw away your meds. But why not think about it? And you don't even have to go out and dig it up. You can go to the health food store and buy evening primrose oil in capsules. So it's kind of, we have to expand the box of how we see our health. Okay, what do we have next, Jonathan? Loquat. Oh, this is one of my favorites to use too, because they're so tasty. I'm always, sometimes my trees produce okay, and sometimes they don't. So I go around and I steal my neighbor's fruit. I ask them sometimes, but I have gone along with a friend to look at some of the really great trees in Homa that nobody's using. I guess I shouldn't admit to that. Okay, well, so here are some of the parts of the plant. If you read about them and do some research or look at the book or whatever, they'll tell you what parts of the plant are useful. And sometimes it might be just the fruit. Sometimes it's the bark and the flowers and leaves and everything. Like magnolia is one of my favorite herbs to use for insomnia and anxiety. And you use all the parts of it. And just to make a tincture with magnolia, to pick those flowers and just like bury your face in it. Oh, crazy. Okay, so here are some of the things that the medicinal properties of loquat. The fruit has lots of nutrients, vitamins A, B6, B17, C, folate, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and calcium, iron, magnesium, manganese, potassium, sodium, and zinc. Ta-da! I mean, who wouldn't want to eat that? And then let's see. So it can be used as the properties are, it's expectorant and mildly sedative. So decongestant and expectorant, the leaves and the fruit can be used for, I make a fabulous cough syrup with loquat and Japanese plum, whatever you want to call it. It makes such a great cough syrup. And what's really fun is to get your kids or grandkids or cousins or whatever the heck and make some of these preparations. I mean, it's a way to introduce kids to the land, back to the land, because sometimes, they're on their screens all the time. But what the heck, you could go out and pick some of these things and come home and use some local honey or something and make up a syrup. It's great. Okay, so the fruit can also be used for blood sugar control and diabetes, coughs, sore throats, inflamed gums, and it can actually also help to prevent retinal damage and cataracts and macular degeneration. Hello, why wouldn't we be using these things? Okay, phew, I'm wearing myself out. Okay, what do we have next? Yellow dock. Okay, so yellow dock is, I first heard about yellow dock from some of my friends who are home birth midwives. And they were using it primarily for women in pregnancy. And the root is the main part that's used traditionally. And it tastes not good. I mean, there are some things that taste worse, but it's not like dessert. And you're not going to chop it up and pan fry it because it's pretty disgusting. However, you can take the leaves, because it has leaves in addition to those seeds there. You can take the leaves and make a nice cider vinegar tincture and use that as a salad dressing. And guess what? It has lots and lots of absorbable iron. So isn't that cool? So, and then the seeds, you can use the seeds like a grain and cook them up with as a grain dish because they have lots of protein. So, wow. Okay, so so here are some of its medicinal properties. And you guys are going to tell me if I'm talking too much, right? Somebody will tell me that. Okay. Okay, so here are some of its medicinal properties. It's alterative. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, it means it alters. So an alterative is something, it's an herbal, old-fashioned herbal word. And what it means is that if taken over time in moderate small doses, it will help to alter metabolism in the direction of health. So that's a pretty cool thing, right? So it's also antibacterial. It's a tonic, a bitter tonic. So like, what is it that people take as a bitter tonic? There's a liqueur that you use that will help to, anyway, it stimulates your digestive juices. So you're all ready to digest the food when you eat it. It's also what's known as a cholagogue, which CHOLAGOGUE, which means it relates to your gallbladder and liver. So it's a tonic for the liver and gallbladder. And it is mildly laxative. So, you know, what the heck? Everybody gets a little constipation every once in a while. And why not use something like yellow dock instead of something harsh? Okay, it can boost hemoglobin levels. And these are some of the other things that it's used for. Constipation, hemorrhoids, intestinal infections, anemia, respiratory inflammations, dry, irritable coughs, sinus infections, bacterial infections, chronic skin diseases, including psoriasis, eczema, acne, ringworm, herpes, and dermatitis. And externally, you can poultice the fresh leaves to put on psoriasis or something like that. Okay, phew. I raced through that one. Now, okay, I guess we're ready for the next slide. Oh, that's me and how you get me. Okay, was there anything else I wanted to talk about? I had one little piece that I wanted to read. Is that our last slide, Jonathan? Okay, so now we're going to indulge me. And this is something, you know, in case you can't tell, I absolutely adore Louisiana and I adore the coast and I love going down there. And as I mentioned, I'm working on another book, and it will be similar, but it will also have some cultivation information in it as well. And as part of working on that, I walk around and I look for things. And one of the plants that I was interested in looking at was something called Jesuit's bark, or Iva frutescens, and it grows at the very edges of the coast. And apparently it's not just in Louisiana. I guess it also occurs in Maine and all along the East Coast. And so I was looking for it, and I was just, you know how I don't know, maybe it doesn't happen for you all, but sometimes I just go down the bayou and I walk out near the water and something happens to me. It's just, it's what poet Wendell Berry has called a piece of wild things. So I just want to read this little paragraph here, if you don't mind. And if you mind, go to the bathroom or something. Okay. Sorry for that. Snarky. All right, here we go. At the end of the land in Lower Montague, I get out of the car and walk along the narrow road. Near a little bayou-side pond, dozens of shorebirds wade in shallow water, lift up in the cloud of feathers as I pass, then settle back down to feed. In the tattered rigging of an old shrimp boat, an osprey has built a nest that looks well used and revisited. When I get close, the big bird shrieks at me, uncomfortable and edgy, so I move away. A couple of fishermen stand in deep grass at the edge of the land, tossing lines into the water. No luck so far, they say, but it's a good day to be out. At the edge of the road, much yellow sweet clover and giant ragweed and sow thistle are thick and lush, and orange lantana is blooming. Around my knees, Jesuit's bark is thick and tall. I'm happy to see it, partly because it's a healing herb, but mostly because it helps to keep the coastal soils in place. I take a photo of the plants and soak up the wild silence, such a rare thing in these noisy, distracted times. I stand on this narrow, sinking spit of land while the grasses shift in the breeze. I am happy, anxious, hopeful, sad. Probably before too long, this place will crumble and wash away, but I will love it until its last salty breath, or until my own. Amen. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Corinne, and thanks for sharing that passage with us. Because there are so many passages like that in your first book. I can't wait to be able to read the second one, because like I said, it's more than an herb journal. It's poetry. You have such a beautiful way with words, because I had a lump in my throat as you got to the end of that paragraph. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Can I just add one thing?
Yes, please,
as
please.
you're talking about that, it just makes me feel like something that I had thought about and I forgot to mention is that I feel like we all love the place so much, and we're all grieving on some level. And so, but we don't, I mean, where can we do that grieving? Sometimes we don't even know what's happening, but I think that's why groups like yours are so important, because it gives us a way to address the issues and to express our grief and to express our hope. And so that's just why I think your group is so important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Gary, I saw that you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'll get the question started. Thanks, Miss Corinne. That was beautiful. And
Well,
now, are you in Maine right now?
I am.
Yeah, I was wondering if the people around you in Maine that are also in a very natural coastal environment, are they also grieving because of, are they seeing changes similar to ours? It's not the same because of the land, but
Right. It's not the same. And actually Mainers have thought that we were escaping this. But last I think it was February or March, Portland had some bad damage, and there are areas up in the mid-coast that have never had anything like what they had. I mean, houses were washed into the sea, total dunes were erased, small towns were all but erased. And it was stunning for people here. So we are beginning to understand that we're not getting out scot-free. Yeah.
thanks again.
You're welcome.
Wendy?
Miss Corinne, thank you so much for that presentation and that quote. It was fabulous. I get a little paranoid. I live in an urban area, and when I think about collecting, I worry about what's in the soil and what's being pulled up into the plants. And I also wonder if, okay, so this is a multi-pronged question. I wonder if what is the nutrients in the soil and how that impacts the medicinal properties of the herbs. And then I think the last one is about preparation, and if your book covers some of that.
So I'll answer the last one first, which is yes, there is a section on how to prepare the herbs, so how to make your preparations. And I'm glad you asked the first question, because I kind of forgot to mention that, but we want to be really careful. Part of being awake and aware of of the problems in Louisiana include the fact that there are many toxins in the soil. So what I recommend for people is that they if you know an area that you feel is pretty wild or pretty safe, not right next to a cane fields look beautiful, but they use tons of chemicals. So don't harvest your plants next to it. And there's a section on that as well in the book in terms of safety for harvesting. What I recommend for people who live in cities or, you know, where you or near a lot of plants and I don't mean green plants, I mean, you know, petroleum plants or chemical plants. I recommend that you consider doing raised beds, making raised beds and growing your own, because that way you can control the soil. And, you know, obviously things in the air will come through, but, you know, the soil it does have some potential for filtering things out. But I think it's a really important concern, and I'm glad you mentioned it. So for me, when I'm in Louisiana, I either go down to a place down the bayou or someplace where, and I don't just go into people's yards. That's another thing. You don't want to be arrested for picking your herbs, you know. But if you have a sense, like you have a relative who has 40 acres or something like that, then fine. If you don't, then I recommend growing your own or going to some place where you know that it's more safe. So thank you for that question. And I forgot your second part.
It was just covering the nutrients in the soil, like if we have really depleted soil, and then what the impact on the quality of the herb is. And then I thought of a fourth one, which is about different varieties and how that is.
Well, let me answer that second one first. Herbs are pretty good at absorbing what they need. So like yellow dock that I talked about, I mean, these herbs have tons of nutrients. So if there's a nutrient around, they're going to get it. However, you know, you also might want to balance that by getting some really good organic soil in a raised bed. And then you know you're getting some real soil and some of the nutrients. And then you can also, you know, you can make your own good soil as well, you know, do composting and things like that. But, you know, it is really important to kind of think about, you know, the health and safety of the soil. And then what was the last one? Oh, about different varieties. In terms of the herb, there, like for instance, evening primrose, I can't remember how many different species there are. But what I usually do, and what I'll do in the book, is if there's an herb where there's 5 different species, then I'll list the uses for each species that have been. Now, sometimes, well, you'll have like St. John's wort or hawthorn, which are going to be in the new book, and they have, I don't know, I can't remember. I think with St. John's wort there are 12 different varieties or species, and not one of them is popular. So, you know, I just give people the information. I mean, there's a lot of research that's been done on St. John's wort and on evening primrose and some of these other plants. And, you know, ultimately you have to end up on the side of safety and on the side of finding some kind of proof to support. I mean, if you think that that something works, well, that's nice. But if you want to be safe and really have an effective medication, then you know, you might want to find or grow a species that you know has been used. And there was something that just crossed my mind about, oh well, hope it'll come back, but it's had something to do with safety, I think. Oh well, maybe it'll come back. Well, anyway, thank you for your questions.
And we encourage everybody to please stick around. At 1 o'clock, we'll have our informal conversation with Ms. Corinne. So if you do have any other questions, you can hang on to them, and we'll get to that shortly. But in the meantime, Ms. Corinne, I'd like to ask you, what is your hope for the coast?
Yeah, I thought about that because I knew you were going to ask me. I think basically what I came up with, I mean, there are a lot of hopes I have for the coast. But to try to put it succinctly, my hope for the coast is stability, appreciation, and healing in whatever form is possible.
Yeah.
That's it.
I appreciate that. Wise words. And thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation. Again, everybody, please stick around. We just have a little bit more housekeeping to take care of here. We do have a position statement, and we encourage everybody to please sign on to that. You can find it at louisianafolklore.org. We also have our working groups. There's the Cultural and Coastal Planning, Artists and Tradition Bearers, Louisiana French Language, Protecting Collections, and Preparing Receiving Communities. If you need any information on that, you can check in the chat. and you can see when those meet and the conveners. We encourage all of you to find what most speaks to you and join one of those or many of those or all of those groups. We hope that you'll join us next month. It's going to be Friday, September 20th, again at noon. We'll have Brooks Frederick with us, who is a he lives in Brooklyn now, but is originally from here in Houma, who will talk to us about being an artist and using art to communicate some of the things that are challenging to address in terms of environment. So we hope that you'll register for that and join us next month. Anyone have any announcements that they would like to make relevant to the group? You can raise your hand. And if not, we can move on. So we hope that you all stick around. This concludes the formal part of the presentation today. Again, we thank Ms. Corinne Martin for her book and for being with us today. And we hope to see you again next month. Thanks so much.